New Jersey, as a recount looms amid a razor-thin win for Democrat Phil Murphy after Republican Jack Ciattarelli greatly outperforms expectations, with many left wondering what's going to happen in the Garden State's midterm elections. Here to react, John Isemann, U.S. House candidate for New Jersey's 7th congressional district.
Look, I think what we saw in Virginia and New Jersey specifically is pushback on just rubber stamp politicians for Biden's agenda, the current administration's failings, and the radical left policy that's sweeping the country right now.
Let's focus on the policy. How do Republicans maintain this momentum that they have over the last 48 hours over the next 12 months headed into November? Because, John, a lot can happen in 12 months.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the policy and what this says about the left, and even more so what it says about the right, what we saw in Virginia was when a party pushes too far left, independents, millennials, suburban women come out in droves and say, this is not the Virginia I know. This is not the New Jersey I know. And they stand up for their families, for their businesses here in New Jersey, a third of which were shut down during the pandemic. So it's a clear referendum on all of the left's policies that have led to the disaster of the last 12 months. But more so, I think this points to what the playbook is for the right, which says, hey, if we go out and recruit and nominate outsider candidates who are not career politicians, are not of political dynasties, we win and we win big. And when candidates run their own races, here Jack's team and Jack made the race about New Jersey and Jack Ciattarelli.
Do you think youth helps the Republicans in 2022?
I think it's an energy that we desperately need. We see one party has picked up the youth movement, and the Republicans have been a bit slower to follow. We really don't have a true champion that can not just be a firebrand for conservative values, but translate them to the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation that votes 5 times more left than right. I mean, Republicans, we put up a lot of great candidates. We have a strong bench right now, but we're the party that put Nixon against Kennedy, Dole against Clinton, and McCain against Obama. I mean, some great leaders in that bunch, but a failure to capture the moment and say, hey, the tides are turning. We don't just need a representative of the next generation, but the true next generation leader that's going to hold competitive seats, not just for a cycle, but for years to come.
Democrats will be trying to hold on to a razor-thin majority in the House of Representatives this fall.
Even Republican challenger John Isemann admits Republicans now have a slight edge in the 7th District.
I think it's undeniable it gives us a slight edge. We added around 17,000 Republicans to the district. It was actually the only one to became most red of any of the other districts through redistricting.
Right. Isemann, one of several challengers from the right, thinks this congressional race is just the beginning of a red wave in New Jersey.
We can't rest on establishment support and say that, well, we're just going to swing to victory because the Democrats sacrificed Tom Malinowski.
From NJPBS, this is NJ Spotlight News with Brianna Venozzi.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us this Thursday night. I'm Brianna Venozzi. The political landscape is changing.
Kaine is facing 6 opponents here. The news from the Supreme Court served to recharge their efforts to paint Kaine as a liberal Republican in conservative clothing.
He certainly does have some answering to do. Right now, the campaign is being run largely like a Joe Biden campaign of say as little and do as little as possible, send as many mailers and as many large faces and names resembling Tom Kaine as possible, without really focusing on the issues.
And if you don't believe that the conservatives are coming out guns blazing,
we're still here at the Birchwood Manor at the Morris County Republican Committee Convention. Joining us here is CD7 candidate John Isemann, as he joins us here on Jersey First. Are you concerned at all that, again, should you win the primary, that you'll be able to get that message out, not just win Republican voters over, but also the independents, which really decide elections?
Yeah, I'm absolutely concerned, right? Nothing is guaranteed. Even in our district, CD7 was the only district in New Jersey that became more red after redistricting. But we're also the only district of the 5 that failed to flip the House in 2020 that might potentially make the same mistake again in 2022. Every other district in the country that was on that cusp, that was the closest 5 in the country, are championing new candidates, people from the private sector like me, young conservatives like me. If we don't do that in this district, I'm afraid that if we don't flip the House, or even if we do flip the House, New Jersey 7 won't get a piece of that majority. How did we get here, right? I've spent time on the West Coast in California, in Brooklyn, bordering AOC's district, but my roots are here. I grew up here. I have the values of a conservative that's from North Jersey, but I've seen why this woke culture infests the next generation. I have the connection to that generation where I can say, hey, we're champions for our principles, but we also know how to best translate them to this next generation of millennials and Gen Zs, which, by the way, is the biggest voting bloc in America.
That's right.
They're voting 5 times more left than right. So what I have is the capability to turn that around and start to bring the next generation into the conservative tent.